Well, good morning. This is Ian R. Crane. It's the morning of Monday, the 15th of July, 2019, and back down here in the southwest of England. And it's a beautiful morning, actually. I'm in a bit of cloud here, so it's a little bit hazy, but temperatures are good, 16, 17 degrees, hardly any breeze. And can't quite see out to the English Channel this morning, but no doubt it's going to clear up a bit later. Well, the title of this morning's broadcast is 5G. It's just not cricket, old boy. Well, that's actually a reference to obviously a couple of things here, not least the 5G event that was put on by Jimmy Elderflower and some of his busking colleagues in London. And this event was put on at the Conway Hall, Red Lion Square, just around the corner from Holborn. And of course, the civil courts, which is where I've spent quite a lot of time over the last few years. Anyway, an outstanding event, standing room only, absolutely packed house. I know Jimmy was really, really nervous. First time he's put on an event of this sort. And what better accolade than an absolutely rammed room. And the level of interest was such that the caretaker had to come and kick everybody out the wrong side of 11 o'clock. And then discussion still continued outside, and it was certainly well after midnight by the time I pulled away from Red Lion Square on Saturday. And I know that from that event, a number of people are already starting to look at what they need to do to host an event in their local area, and also to start embryonic 5G awareness groups in their respective areas around London and the southeast of England. And for those of you who do live in Islington, then tonight there is a council meeting of the Health and Care Committee. And although 5G isn't on the agenda, then this is a tremendous opportunity to go along and let the Health and Care Committee of Islington Borough Council know that their residents are on the 5G case. And it is Arqiva who seem to have the majority of the PFI contracts around London for managing street lighting. And of course, it's the street lighting that is being modified, LED street lights being put in place, and the 5G transmitters being put on top of those street lights. So if you're in the Islington, live in the Islington Borough, then maybe consider going along to that committee meeting tonight and getting 5G on the next committee meeting, because the likelihood of it being discussed tonight is slim to none. But I think people who attended the meeting on Saturday appreciate the urgency of getting this topic on the local council meeting. Well, the second reference is to a conversation that I had with somebody at the end of Saturday evening, and they told me that they were really excited because they had a ticket to go to the World Cup cricket final at Lord's on Saturday. And I have to say, I mean, I'm not one necessarily to watch much sport myself, but the cricket yesterday was absolutely spellbinding. And I think cricket and excitement don't necessarily go in the same sentence. But yesterday, the World Cup final had absolutely everything. And, it was an absolutely tremendous spectacle and a celebration of everything that humanity should be, with people coming together and sharing the sporting moment. And of course, the same could be said at Wimbledon and also at Silverstone. So yesterday was certainly, a sporting marathon for those who wanted to follow what was going on. Well, this gentleman said that he was going to take the opportunity of whomever it was that he happened to be sitting next to at Lord's, then he was going to subtly introduce the subject of 5G, and I'm looking forward to hearing how he got on, or whether he had to move seats a few times. But nonetheless, I'm sure if he was talking, in the with the Lord's members, then their response would have been simply, it just doesn't sound like cricket, old boy, does it? And if anybody wanted an insight into how far removed from cricket the 5G agenda really is, then the Sunday Times yesterday helped you out, by running a double-page feature on pages 18 and 19. And here we have it here. Barcodes and cameras track China's lab rats. And it's really talking about how China has implemented the nth degree surveillance state up in the Xinjiang region, up in the northwest of China, which is primarily a Muslim population apparently. But the population there are subjected to extreme surveillance and monitoring. And of course, people reading this will go, "Oh, that's terrible. That's unbelievable. You know, how can people live in such a surveillance state? How ignorant can you be?" Because the bottom line is that the UK is actually the most surveilled state on the planet. And you know, with cameras, I mean, it's estimated that if you're in London, then basically you're caught on camera over 1,000 times from the time you arrive in the city to the time you leave. And of course, the police are experimenting with facial recognition systems. Doesn't seem to be working too well at the moment, but that ain't going to stop them. They're just going to keep working until they've literally got a facial and biometrics recognition system that gives them the opportunity to track everyone and anyone who happens to be in the city. And of course, people say, but why would anybody want to do that? It's not anybody, it's the artificial intelligence. And then should anybody want to retrieve that data, of course, it's immediately accessible. And you know, this shouldn't be any great surprise because, well, what this article really spells out is what Marion King Hubbard and Howard Scott were talking about as their wet dream when they wrote the Technocracy Inc. document back in 1932. And Zbigniew Brzezinski, writing in Between Two Ages, the technocratic era, which he wrote in 1969, published in 1970, basically made the observation that the technocrats would not be constrained by traditional liberal values. In other words, he was making the observation that once the state had access to this kind of technology, it would use it in whatever way it deemed, whether it's appropriate or not, but it would use it in whatever way it deems necessary to literally keep tabs on the masses 24/7. So this article that appeared in the Sunday Times, and I will link to the web version of this under the video, but do take a look at it, because you know what is being presented as the horror of a surveillance state in northwest China. Actually, this is written sort of pretty much tongue-in-cheek, because we're not far off this in the UK. And of course, at least in China, it's pretty obvious. You know, it's out there, it's in your face. Here, it's done surreptitiously, and then the establishment goes, "No, really? There's that level of monitoring?" And yet, if you do a subject access request to the police forces or to any of the other corporations, the PFIs that are managing the surveillance state, then you might be quite surprised at what data they're holding on you. So I'm back in the Southwest for a week of 5G awareness events. Tonight I should be with John Kitson at the Exeter Phoenix in Gandy Street, and you can get tickets on the door, or you can call the Phoenix box office to secure an advance ticket, and that event will start at 7:30. Then tomorrow we shall be at the Seven Stars Hotel in Totnes, and of course Totnes is the area where the parents protested almost exactly 1 year ago at Dartington Primary School after a phone mast manifested literally adjacent to the school. And it's truly remarkable and no coincidence, in my opinion, how many of these masts are manifesting adjacent to school properties, and in some cases actually on the school property. And the parents protested. They took their children out of school until such time as the governors and Vodafone confirmed that the phone mast would not be activated. And those parents had some foresight, because it's now, a couple of months ago since the elementary school in Ripon in California reported that there was a cancer cluster. And a number of the children attending this school had developed different cancers, but the only thing that had changed was that Sprint had erected a phone mast adjacent to the school. And of course, it's amazing what a salary check can make you deny. It's called cognitive dissonance. And the Sprint representative said that they could categorically assure everyone that the phone mast had nothing to do with triggering this spate of cancers. Yet, of course, the industry itself, the telecoms industry itself, acknowledges that there are no independent studies which prove 5G frequencies to be safe. And it is interesting that a number of corporations are starting to get a little bit concerned that they just accept the telecoms companies' statements that, yeah, everything's fine, you know, there's nothing to worry about here, but the due diligence is not being undertaken. And yesterday in the Mail on Sunday, there was an article about Worcester Bosch. Now, Worcester Bosch is a company that prides itself on its commitment to being environmentally sound. Yet, the article yesterday was announcing that Worcester Bosch has been one of the test beds for implementation of 5G technology to enhance their productivity. Well, again, what due diligence have the management of Worcester Bosch undertaken to be sure that any of their employees that are exposed to this 5G microwave radiation, that they're safe? Somehow, I don't think they will have done any. There will have simply been the acceptance that those who are marketing this technology will have done everything necessary to ensure that it is safe, but they haven't. They are simply interested in getting the technology rolled out. So Worcester Bosch, the management team and the employees are nothing more than guinea pigs here. And the companies that have installed this technology are simply keeping their fingers crossed that nothing manifests, because they cannot be sure. And so, you know, the onus really now is on the management of Worcester Bosch to implement the appropriate health, safety, and the environmental protection for their employees, because right now they are being extremely remiss and cavalier in their quest for greater profitability. And of course, this is just one company that makes it into the national media. I'm sure they are not an isolated company, and that there are other manufacturing environments around the UK that have been persuaded to experiment with this technology. And any of their employees that are exposed to this technology are effectively the lab rats, as referred to in the Sunday Times article here. So we're going to be talking about this tonight in Exeter, tomorrow night in Totnes, and on Thursday night in Torquay. More about that event on Wednesday. And then next week I shall be in Swansea on Wednesday the 24th, at the Cinema and Co, which is a relatively small venue. So if you want to come to that event in Swansea, then my advice is to book your tickets in advance, and you can do that through the Cinema and Co website. So, you know, we're going to obviously, hopefully, all enjoy summer. You know, people have been working hard through the year. They need to take a break. They need to spend time with their families. But don't think for 1 minute that the socio-psychopathic parasites who are looking to establish full spectrum dominance across the wider population, and this technology is literally their wet dream. When Marion King Hubbard and Howard Scott wrote their document in 1932, they had a vision, but they didn't have the technology. When Zbigniew Brzezinski wrote Between Two Ages, the Technotronic era, then you know, he knew that technology was rapidly advancing, and in fact already available within the military. And it wouldn't be that long before it became available to be rolled out across an unsuspecting civilian population. And so, you know, Brzezinski's book from 1969 is extremely prescient. or maybe he just simply knew what was going to unfold and was trying to give people a heads up. No, I don't think so, because he was deep inside it. And of course, when he did write that book, he was basically paraphrasing what was in the report from Iron Mountain, which had come into the public domain a couple of years previous. So, when anyone tries to dismiss what we present as rampant conspiracy theory, what they're actually demonstrating is their own lack of research, their attachment to the state or establishment narrative. And, basically, the moment that somebody uses the weaponized phrase conspiracy theory, you know very well that they are outside of their comfort zone and that you have taken them beyond what they believe to be their worldview, which, of course, is based on simply regurgitating what is pumped into their consciousness through the lamestream media. But those who retain and are now developing their capability and capacity for independent thought and independent analysis of what's unfolding are becoming increasingly concerned. And, 3 weeks ago, Tonia Antoniazzi, the MP for Gower, delivered an outstanding 20-minute presentation at a parliamentary committee on her concerns about untried, untested 5G technology in total breach of the Nuremberg Code, which outlaws governments and corporations experimenting on people without their permission. Well, the British government's been doing that for a long time, of course, and not least the floods in North Devon, which would be 65 odd years ago now, 67 years ago, isn't it, 1952, with the floods of Linton and Lynmouth, which are still regarded by many in Devon as a terrible natural event. But it wasn't, because the MOD actually released a documentation in 2002 revealing that the RAF had been conducting cloud seeding experiments. So the state murdered the 36 people who died in the Linton and Lynmouth floods because they were experimenting on an unsuspecting population. And, basically to hell with the consequences. And this is going on all the time. But we do have an opportunity here to nip this in the bud. But it's going to take each and every one of us who is aware to share our insight, to direct people to the appropriate research and encourage them to come to their own conclusion. Because if we don't manage to get the block on this 5G rollout, then what's being reported in the lamestream media in the UK as the extreme surveillance society in China will be undeniably outside your front door, outside your back door, at the end of your street, and every 150 meters that you walk out in the open air. And if that's what you're comfortable with, then basically just step aside and have a nice life. But what you are doing is you are condemning, by your acquiescence, you are condemning future generations to lives of unimaginable and unbelievable misery. So it's up to us. And maybe the first step, if you're in the southwest, is to come along to one of these events over the next few days, either in Exeter tonight, Totnes tomorrow, or Torquay on Thursday, and then in Wales, in Swansea, on Wednesday the 24th. And then, of course, we have the 5G tour, which kicks off on September the 7th now, on Saturday, September the 7th, in Appledore in North Devon, and then 23 dates around the country, culminating in mid-October, and then leading up to AV 10.1 on October the 27th. Tickets for the 5G tour event will be available within the next 7 to 10 days. So, plenty of time yet. But, meanwhile, what I'm saying is the truth. You know that what I'm encouraging you and others to do their own research is the only way forward. And those people who try to undermine those of us who simply encourage people to do their own research, you know, maybe you need to take a long look in the mirror and just ask, what is your real purpose? And who are you aiding by trying to undermine those who are trying to do something constructive about this pernicious agenda? You have a great day. Take care. And hopefully I'll see you either in Exeter or Totnes tonight or tomorrow night. If not, I'll be back with you at 8:30 on Wednesday morning. You have a great day.